So we'll continue our discussion about confirmation time, and today we'll especially look at Satoshi's analysis. So this analysis is available in his white paper on Bitcoin. So what do we want to know really? So what exactly is confirmation time? So the Bitcoin blockchain is not a traditional banking system where once you make a transaction it gets into the bank's books, and once there is an interbank transfer and so on, where the protocol works, the transaction is complete. So Bitcoin is a bit different. So you have this blockchain like I'm showing here, and the transaction might get into one of these blocks, but then you never know, due to some reason a longer chain might at some point be formed, which has forked from one of the parents, a parent or an ancestor of this particular block in the chain. And this longer chain wins because we said that all the miners are supposed to mine on the longest chain. Okay, so if there are multiple chains like this, in this particular situation for example, if this chain is visible compared to this one, then or at least if both the chains are visible, then the honest miners have to mine on the longest chain. So they'd have to mine on this chain. So this chain would eventually continue increasing in size, and this would become the permanent Bitcoin blockchain, let's say. So this particular transaction is orphaned, and it doesn't get. So if this might happen naturally too, so you never know, right? Yeah, you just because you don't see this blue colored chain here at the bottom, you only see that your transaction has got into a block. It doesn't mean that it's a done deal, because you never know. Maybe there's just no attack even, but just some blocks are delayed in the network and they might show up and they might orphan this block, right? So Satoshi was of course looking at an active attack where the attacker is privately mining this chain, and his game was to actually spend the same money twice, once in this honest chain which was visible to everybody else, and once also in his own chain, so that he could get away with a double spend. Somebody would be naive enough to accept this transaction because it's appeared in a block, and finally that transaction is invalidated, it's orphaned, and he has got to spend the money a second time in his own chain, right, which becomes the main one. So the question is, how easy is it to do this? So what we are going to assume is that the honest miners have a p fraction of the hashing power, and the remaining is with the attacker. So attacker has q hashing power, which is 1 minus p. And in the previous lecture we did some analysis about how blocks are actually generated over time, and we said that blocks are generated in a Poisson fashion. So recap of the previous lecture. So the block generation process that would be well modeled by Poisson. So even if the network has delays and other things, still the block generation process would be Poisson. Everybody sort of locally running their game, trying to solve the puzzle, and it's like flipping coins, and so essentially it becomes a Poisson process. So if there was a oracle or somebody who could see the entire network, what's happening at all the miners, he would see the blocks generated as a Poisson process. Okay. And we said that the interarrival times of a Poisson process is an exponential. Okay, so they go together. If you're given a process, an arrival process where the interarrival times are IID and exponential. So IID is independent and identically distributed. Then of course the process is Poisson. Okay. So if this is the timeline, the block generation process, these are the blocks getting generated. The interarrival is exponential, and if you look at any fixed time interval, the number of blocks is Poisson. And we also looked at a small sort of game last time, and we said that suppose you had the honest people mining on this block and the attacker mining on the block, right? This obviously, even when both, if both people are honest, everybody's mining on that block, but just to simplify matters, let's say that everybody, the attacker too, is mining on the same block, the honest are mining, and we want to know among these two parties who's going to create a block first. It's sort of a competition. And we said in this particular situation, probability of the attacker winning is Q. And so obviously the probability of the honest winning, honest miners winning, is P. Okay, and we are going to use this, in fact Satoshi uses this result in his paper. So let's try to analyze this process. So we want to know confirmation time is how long does anybody who's put a particular transaction, how long does he have to wait before he's sure that his transaction with high probability is in the chain. Okay, so essentially we want to know number of confirmations for user to be sure his transaction will be in the chain. Forever. And of course there is no such thing as 100% guarantee in a situation like in a scenario like Bitcoin. So this would have to be with high probability. Okay, so there are no 100% guarantees in Bitcoin. Donald Trump might come and just destroy the whole Bitcoin blockchain. Right? People think their transactions are there forever, but he generates a longer chain, and that's the end of Bitcoin. Right? That could happen, but under certain assumptions, we can find out what is a reasonable confirmation time. So how are we going to analyze this? So we say that this is the transaction this is the block with the transaction which we are interested in. This is its parent which it's pointing to. And of course the parent keeps pointing we go all the way up to the genesis block. And we're going to call this the first confirmation. Remember that zero confirmation means that even when the transaction is not in a block, the person who's receiving the money in the transaction accepts that it's a done deal. Okay, zero confirmation, and the person can do that if he knows what is there in the transaction pools of various miners, at least those with most of the hashing power, and what algorithm they are following for including transaction. But it's a dicey affair for zero confirmation. But the question is, how many such blocks should you wait for? So Satoshi said, what if the attacker unknown to anybody, what if there is some attacker who is trying to create a fork okay, which is he's creating it privately and he wants to kill that transaction which is there in the main chain. And this is completely private, and then he's going to release this chain when it's longer than this. Okay. So it's a very tricky situation. So suppose I say that 4 blocks is enough for me. Okay, suppose I say 4 confirmations is enough for me, and let's say I'm a shopkeeper and I return some goods in exchange for this transaction, and I believe that this transaction is going to be there forever, so that I can spend my money anytime later on. So the question is, in such a situation, how many blocks has the attacker generated? So maybe he has only generated 2 blocks. Okay, so I don't know what the attacker has done. This is all hidden. It's hidden from the honest miners. The attacker is not broadcasting his blocks. He's not a honest miner. So in this particular situation, what would the attacker have to do to kill this particular block? So if we go on in time, the honest people are generating blocks here, and the attacker too is, let's say, continuing the game. He's trying to generate his blocks, and some point in the future, let's say, he manages to overtake this honest chain. Okay. So maybe let's say 40 minutes after this transaction, let's say roughly 4 blocks were created. So after that, the shopkeeper gave him something in return, and there was no sign of an attacker chain at all. This whole chain was being developed privately. And let's say 2 hours later, suddenly a very, very long chain consisting of many, many blocks. In 2 hours, maybe this chain extended by another 12 blocks, roughly, right? But this chain this was larger than 16 blocks. So after 2 hours, this is greater than, let's say, 16 blocks. And at this point, the attacker could release his chain, right? And he could kill this transaction. Okay. So this means that we've sort of lost the game. A double spend was possible here. Somewhere in this chain, the attacker could put in another transaction. This is transaction 1, and transaction 2 has successfully performed a double. So this is one scenario, but let's look at another scenario where the attacker actually had let's just say this is scenario 1, and scenario 2. Maybe the attacker was even ahead of the honest chain at this point. Okay, so I'm just saying at this point in time over here. Okay, so here in the scenario 1, we said the attacker had 2 blocks, and here he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 blocks. So the attacker he's clever. He knows that the shopkeeper is going to consider 4 as his confirmation time. Suppose he knows that. And so even though he's generated a longer chain, he doesn't reveal it. Because if he reveals it before this 4th block is generated, then the shopkeeper knows that, okay, anyway he hasn't accepted this transaction and a longer chain was generated. So he knows this transaction hasn't gotten into the chain. Okay. So the attacker is clever. He waits till this 4th block is generated. Even though he has a longer chain, he doesn't reveal it. He waits a little bit more time. Okay, maybe after 1 or 2 blocks are generated, maybe he too generated a few blocks. And now he releases it. So even though the attacker was ahead at the time this 4th confirmation occurred, he didn't reveal his chain. He released it a little bit later so that the shopkeeper returned some goods in exchange for this transaction after the 4th transaction. So after the 4th confirmation. Okay. So you never know when your expected transaction, expected confirmation occurs, whether it's the 4th or 6th or whatever you decide. You never know where the attacker is. He could be behind you, he could be ahead of you. Okay. So the question is, how do we analyze it? It's a little bit of a tricky scenario, and Satoshi did a fairly good job. Of course, other people came and improved on his analysis, and they did more general analysis. But it took a long time. It took about 6-7 years after Satoshi came out with Bitcoin for people to do a much deeper analysis, a more general analysis, and now people are fairly confident of a Bitcoin-like system. They know that if the attacker has less mining power than the honest miners, it's going to be very hard for him to do these sorts of double spend attacks. In fact, any kind of attack. They've generalized the analysis a lot. But how do we analyze this? And so what Satoshi assumes in his network is that network delay is 0. So it's a simplified situation where Satoshi is saying that when anybody releases a block into the network, it's broadcasted immediately. So it's not too realistic, but at least we get some idea of what might happen. So let's see over time how many blocks ahead the honest miner is. So we are comparing the two chains in length, the honest miner's chain and the attacker's chain, and we are assuming the attacker is doing this sort of an attack. He's going from the parent onwards. So let's say that the number of blocks which the honest miner is ahead So the number of blocks the honest chain is compared to the attacker's chain. And let's just call this some random variable z, and this is time. Okay, so let's say that initially the let's say that as time progresses, let's say that let's say that we start somewhere here. Let's say that we are starting at 0 time. And where let's say only the parent is generated, right? And both honest and the attacker are trying to generate blocks. Okay. So let's say that the attacker, or let's say, so this is the parent. This is the time 0 is the time at which the parent is generated, and now the honest are generating blocks, the attacker is generating blocks. So the honest are generating blocks here, and the attacker is generating his own blocks. So the game begins when the parent is generated at that time instant. And let's say that this block is generated first. Let's say that honest people have generated it first. And let's say the block is generated at this point in time. So Z has become 1 over here. And let's say that the honest miners generate another block, let's say somewhere over here. So remember that this is a random process, so the blocks are not equally spaced apart. And so at this point in time, the honest have gone up to 2. But then let's say that the attacker got lucky and he created a block. And let's say that it was generated somewhere here. So at this particular point in time, the lead came down to 1 again of the honest miners. And but let's say that the honest generated another block, right? So let's say this was generated 4th and this one 5th and so on. So it went up here and it came down and so on. So this is what is happening over time. And let's say that we are looking at the S conformation. Okay, so the numbers written here are just telling you the order in which blocks were generated, but I mean that there are S blocks over here. So this would be the S-th conformation. So somewhere here at the S-th conformation where this is generated, this particular random process would be somewhere. We don't know, we'll have to analyze where this could be. So what would be the range of this? So we might want to think here, what could Z be over here at this particular point in time when the S-th conformation is generated? Okay. So how many blocks ahead of the attacker can the honest miners be? So obviously the honest miners have only generated S blocks. So this can only be at most S. Can't be more than that, right? Because the honest miners only have S blocks. But what is the lower bound of Z? Okay, so it turns out that there is no lower bound, because in theory, even with maybe a small probability, a very small probability, the attacker could have generated tons of blocks, lots and lots of them. So if let's say that we are looking at the 6th conformation where S is equal to 6, maybe the attacker has generated 100 blocks, you never know, right? Or maybe he's generated only 2. So Z could go negative because the attacker could be in fact ahead of the honest chain. So and it has no lower bound. So we could in fact go to minus infinity. So we'll have to consider this full range of Z's. And now the question is, what is the probability of the attacker generating a longer chain at some point in the future? So this is a tricky situation. So first of all, we have to look at all possible values of Z. And given a particular value of Z in this range, somewhere between minus infinity to S, what is the chance that the attacker is able to generate a longer chain at some point in the future? So let's think about it. So let's say that we are here, and let's say that the attacker has generated a block, so it comes down. At another point, let's say the attacker has generated another block, it goes down. So let's say the attacker is having a field day, he's generating more and more blocks, right? But then the honest chain keeps increasing. But at some point, this Z becomes 0. And this is a situation where the attacker has won the game and he can generate a longer chain. So he broadcasts the chain at this point in time and he kills the honest chain. Okay, so what we were discussing is that we were at Z and the honest chain was ahead by Z blocks, and the game continued after this. Okay, so we said the shopkeeper accepted the transaction at this point, but the attacker caught up, his chain caught up in time. Maybe the honest chain extended the lead somewhere in between, but finally the attacker caught up, and this is where we say that the attacker wins. So this is what Satoshi does in his analysis, right? And he wants to find out what is the probability that after S confirmations the attacker can win. So he has to look at all possible values of Z here from S to minus infinity, and for each of them he has to calculate the probability of the attacker win. So actually the real situation is a little bit different from this, in that for the attacker to win, it's not enough for him to generate a chain exactly equal. For him to be sure, he'd have to be one ahead, so that when he releases the longer chain, everybody definitely shifts to his blockchain. Okay. But of course he could still win even if he just catches up and he becomes equal, because if everybody sees his block before the others, then of course they start mining on it, right? But anyway, so strictly speaking, we should look at the attacker or Z becoming -1, but Satoshi looked at 0, and we'll just stick to it. Okay. So how do we do this analysis? It's a little bit tricky. So first of all, this S confirmation can occur at any point in time, right? So it's if we look at only at the honest block arrivals, that's an exponential inter-arrival time process. So just the honest arrivals are themselves a Poisson process. Okay, though it's a little bit slower than if everybody was mining together on the same chain, the attacker and the honest miners. But just the honest miners themselves generate blocks as a Poisson process. Okay, so this location in time is variable. Okay, so this is a tricky situation that can happen anywhere, and depending on where it occurred, of course, that will change what Z is, right? Because if this S confirmation occurred very late, maybe the honest people were a little bit slow in mining, maybe they got unlucky, then the attacker might be even more ahead, or he could be closer to the honest chain, right? If he's behind, or he could be far ahead even, right? So attacker has had more time to mine if this S confirmation occurs later. Okay, so that is a tricky situation. How do we analyze it? Okay, so should we analyze it in continuous time, or how do we do it, right? So of course Satoshi made some simplifying assumptions, but other people did a better job than that. So there's somebody called Manny Rosenfeld. So Manny Rosenfeld was one of the first person to do an analysis after Satoshi, and did a slightly better analysis, but got almost the same results. So though Satoshi deliberately made some simplifying assumptions, he pretty much got a very accurate result. So how are we going to analyze this? So Manny Rosenfeld does the analysis completely in the discrete domain. He doesn't look at continuous time. So completely in discrete time. So how do we do this? So let's think of it as a coin toss experiment. And let's say, We are starting from 0, let's say, and every time a block is generated, I'm going to sort of mark a point over here. So this is the number of blocks in total, sum of honest and attackers blocks. So let's say that the honest people got the first block, so I'm just going to mark honest blocks here and the attackers blocks here. So okay, attacker, let's say, is having a field day, so he generates, let's say, 2 blocks or maybe even 3 sorry, the honest people have a field day, they've generated 3 blocks, but then the attacker generates some blocks, like maybe 2 blocks, honest generates a block, and so on, right? And we want to look at the situation where the honest people have generated S blocks. So this is the point in time we want to look at. So the question is, how many blocks does the attacker have over here? So let's think about it. So there are S blocks here, so he could have 0 blocks, he could have 1 block, he could have 2 blocks also, right? But it can take any number, so we want to look at all possibilities. Let me just okay, so and we are saying that the attacker is, or honest is, ahead by Z. Okay, so suppose I call this some X, the number of blocks here is X, right? Attacker's blocks are X. So what is X in terms of S and Z? Okay, so S minus X is equal to Z, right? Which implies X is equal to S minus Z, right? Okay, so the attacker has generated S minus Z blocks. And so what is the total number of blocks over here? It's S plus S minus Z. So the total number of blocks here is 2S minus Z. So Benny Rosenfeld said, let's analyze this as just some coin toss experiment, and every time we toss the coin, what is the probability that the honest people win, what is the probability that the attacker wins? And this is the analysis we did in the previous lecture. So let's say we have a coin toss experiment. So honest winning is P, and the attacker winning is Q, which is just 1 minus P. So we have this coin toss experiment, heads with probability P, tails with probability Q, which is 1 minus P. And what we're doing is we are waiting for the S head to occur. That's the game that we are playing. We are waiting for this point in time. And we want to calculate what is the probability of Z at that particular instant. Okay, so it's a coin toss experiment in which we have S heads and the last one is a head. So we are given that the last coin toss is a head, right? And there are totally S heads. What is the probability of Z taking different values? Okay, it could be, what is the probability of X taking different values? It's the same thing. Okay, so The attacker could be behind by S blocks, but it could be behind by any Z, which could go all the way to minus infinity. Okay, so we are going to say P Z S is equal to the probability that the honest are ahead of by Z so ahead by Z conditioned on the number of honest blocks is S, right? So really what I mean to say is we are looking at the time instant when the S block is generated, and we are going to say what is the probability that the honest are ahead by Z. So this is one probability which we have to calculate. There is another probability which we need to calculate, which is given that the honest are ahead by Z, what is the probability of the attacker catching up, and that is what we are going to call QZ. Okay, so let's calculate what these are. So we'll just continue with the analysis. So the probability that the attacker catches up after S honest blocks are generated is equal to the probability over all possible Z values from minus infinity to S. So it's the probability that the honest are ahead by Z when the S block is the honest block is generated, multiplied by the probability of the attacker catching up, given that he was behind by Z. Okay, so this is really the probability that we are trying to calculate. Okay, so just to be explicit, QZ is the probability that the attacker catches up given he is behind by Z. Okay. Now, strictly speaking, we should be looking at another condition, that we are looking at the time instant when the S block is generated. But it turns out that we don't need to consider that, because what we have here is a memoryless process. So the past really doesn't matter. So given that, let's say this is the point in time when the S honest block was generated, and let's say that Z is a particular value over here. Now it doesn't matter when this S arrival of the honest block occurs. It could happen, it doesn't matter what happens in the past. So the past is irrelevant because we are looking at a memoryless process. So the chances of the attacker winning only depend on this present state. And of course he could win like this, maybe he wins the game here, that he catches up, or he could take maybe a little bit longer, we never know, right? These are all possibilities. So this is something called a random walk. It's a very well studied process where you could go up by a certain amount, by let's say by 1 with a certain probability, or you couldn't go down with a certain probability. Okay. So these random walks have been studied extensively in the past. This is a one-dimensional random walk, and of course you can even have two-dimensional, three-dimensional and so on. Okay. So QZ is the probability that given that we are at Z over here, what's the probability that this random walk actually hits 0 at some time in the future? And PZ is what is the probability that we take a particular value of Z when this S block is generated? Okay, because Z could be actually S here, or it could even be something smaller all the way up to minus -. So if we compute these two, we are sort of done, right? We can numerically just calculate what RS is and see what sort of probabilities we get for RS for different values of S. So let's look at that. So let's calculate PZS. Okay, so we have a coin toss experiment. And this is the honest, and these are the attacker blocks. Right, and we have let's say some honest blocks, some attacker blocks, and so on. And we say that this last one is honest, and there are totally 2s minus z. So if we look at all blocks up to this last one, excluding the last one, so there are s on top, and so here, so this particular point is this, we're going to have 2s minus z minus 1th block over here. Okay, so what is the probability that we are honest or ahead by z? So it's just a coin toss experiment. So out of 2s minus z minus 1, we are choosing s minus 1 honest blocks. So remember, this is honest, so there must be s minus 1 honest blocks here. P to the power of s minus 1. Okay, there are that many honest blocks, and q to the power of s minus z, there are that many attacker blocks. Okay? So this is the probability that we have this particular, we are looking at all possibilities up to here, and in addition to that we want the next arrival to be honest. Okay, so this is saying that the last one is honest, and this is looking at all combinations of the previous possible outcomes of the coin tosses. Okay, so this is equal to PZS, and we can plug in the values of P and Q and so on and just numerically compute. So what about QZ? So here we are looking at a random walk. So we are starting out at a particular value of z, and we want to know what is the probability that we are going to hit 0 sometime in the future. So we are going to look at this in discrete time. So again, I mean, if I plot it in real time, of course, these are exponential distributions, these interarrival times. But I'm going to look at it completely in discrete time. So I'm just again marking when the first block after the, so this is where I had the S, the honest block. So I'm just numbering when the next block arrives, whether it's honest or attackers, and so on. So maybe it's an attacker block first, and then followed by an honest block, maybe followed by another honest block, and so on. Maybe another honest block, and so on. And we want to know, I mean, what's the probability that any point in the future we cross this zero threshold that the attacker catches up. So how do we calculate this? Okay, because I mean, if you think of it, it's a tricky thing to analyze because there are infinite possibilities, right? Any of these you can draw plenty of them where you actually reach zero, right? There are infinite possible paths over here. Okay. So of course this has been analyzed extensively. So how do we analyze it? So let's say that you're at Z over here. What's going to happen at the next point? You're either going to be here at Z plus 1, right? Either you go up or you come down to Z minus 1. There are no other possibilities. So you go up here with probability P, that's that you get a heads in essentially, or you go down by Q, Q is 1 minus P. Okay, so these are just the two possibilities. So suppose we went to Z plus 1 as, or suppose we went to Z minus 1 over here, as was shown over here in this particular example. What is the probability now that we actually reach the zero threshold sometime in the future? Okay, and it turns out that probability that you go from here to 0 is nothing but Q of Z minus 1, just from our definition, right? QZ is the probability of going from Z to 0 at some point in the future. And if suppose we had gone to Z plus 1 and we said what is the probability that we go from here all the way to 0, that is nothing but QZ plus 1. Okay. So we end up with a recurrence relation which says that QZ is equal to P times QZ plus 1 plus Q times QZ minus 1, and this is true of course for Z greater than 0, and the question is what is QZ for Z less than 0 or less than or equal to 0. Well, I mean, you can think about it. So QZ, so we are really interested in the probability of the attacker winning, right? So probability that he's going to win if he's actually ahead, which means that Z is 0 or negative, is actually 1, right? We don't have to worry about that at all. Okay, so that's a sort of trivial situation where the attacker is anyway ahead, so he's always going to definitely win the game. Okay. So what does QZ turn out to be? So QZ is equal to P times QZ plus 1 plus Q times QZ minus 1 for Z greater than 0, and we can essentially solve this to get the following. QZ is nothing but Q by P to the power of Z. For Z greater than, in fact equal to 0, you can put it, you get 1, and it is 1 for Z less than 0. Okay. And this is true provided Q is less than P. Okay, so if the attacker's hashing power is less than the honest hashing power, this is the probability that given he was behind by Z or the honest were ahead by Z, this is the probability that he actually wins the game. Okay. So what if Q is greater than P? What happens? What's the probability of his winning? So this is a 51% attack, and so this is where we can't do much. Okay, so he always wins. So QZ is equal to 1 always, no matter what Z is. And so this is a situation we are not too interested in. We are going to assume that the honest miners actually have more hashing power. Okay, so let's see what Rosenfeld got, and Satoshi gets the same thing. Okay, so Satoshi did a more complicated analysis which was less accurate, right? He looked at part of the analysis in continuous time, so we have to look at Poisson distributions there, which makes it a little bit trickier. So here we've just stuck to coin tosses and done a pretty good job. So what do the graphs look like for RS? So let's plot here probability that the attacker wins. So RS is the probability attacker wins. After S confirmations. And what we're going to plot here is on the x-axis is Q. So we want to look at different attacker hashing power, and we want to say what's the probability he's going to win. Okay, so obviously the more hashing power he has, the higher the chances of his winning. So at this particular point, of course, he has 50% hashing power, and so he always wins. RS is always 1. But what about below that? So what if he has only 10% of the hashing power and so on? So let's just plot this. So this is 0.1, 0.01, 0.001, right? 10 to the power of minus 4, 10 to the power of minus 5. Okay. And if it turns out that if we look at 10 confirmations, then if the attacker has only 10% of the hashing power, then with only probability 10 to the power of minus 5, he's going to win. Okay, so no matter, how long the attacker sort of keeps generating his private chain, if he waits forever, we'd have to worry that he wins with this small probability. So the attacker would have a lot of patience, and he'd win only with this small probability. So effectively the graph looks something like this. And what if, let's say, S is equal to 6? So it turns out that if we wait for 6 confirmations, then with probability 10 to the power of minus 3 only, the attacker is going to win. And of course, this probability goes up as the attacker has more and more hashing power. And if I wait for 4 confirmations, it's a little bit less than 0.01. Okay, so the more confirmations I wait for, the better. Right? If the shopkeeper says I want 10 confirmations, so 10 confirmations takes on average a lot of time. 100 minutes, right? So you go for a coffee and if he waits for, asks you to wait for 100 minutes, I mean that's no good, right? But even if he waits for 6, but of course he's pretty much sure he's going to get the money, assuming that the attacker has only 0.1 of the hashing power. If he asks you to wait for 6 confirmations, which is 1 hour, he's still fairly sure only about 10 to the power of minus 3 chance of the attacker, right? And if he asks you to wait for less time, of course, the higher the chances of the attacker winning and a double spend taking place. Okay, but anyway, so of course it's a little bit of a tricky situation because you don't know what the attacker has, right? What does he have, 0.1 or 0.2 or 0.3, right? And the probability changes depending on that. So Satoshi, of course, said, let's assume that the attacker has only 10%. So Q is only 0.1. So Satoshi looked at the entire graph, but this particular example is what he said. Okay, I mean suppose there's a lot of hashing power in the world and the attacker has only 10% of the hashing power. Then the chances of his winning are quite small, 10 to the power of minus 5, right? 10 to the power of minus 3, provided S is equal to 6. So roughly 10 to the power of minus 3 chance. So because Satoshi described this in his paper, he particularly looked at this example. Sort of the rule of thumb became that you have to wait for 6 confirmations. Okay, but there's no such thing. I mean, if the attacker has less than 10%, you could get away with fewer confirmations for the same probability. Right? And if the attacker has more than 10%, then 6 confirmations don't give you this probability. They will give you something bigger, right? A higher probability of the attacker. But the rule of thumb in the Bitcoin community is 6 confirmations, and I mean it really depends on what sort of attack power the attacker has. So this is the main analysis that Satoshi did, and this 6 confirmation rule has sort of stuck, and you know the limitations of what it is. But anyway, no matter how many confirmations you wait for, in practice it's a lot of time. Even a single confirmation you have to wait for 10 minutes after the transaction is broadcast. Right? We looked at that last time, and every additional confirmation you have to roughly wait 10 minutes on average. Right? And that's a lot of time if you're buying coffee or something like that. Right? We are impatient people. We want the transaction to take place in a few seconds. Right? So people have worked around this problem, and when we look at Lightning Network, we'll see that your transaction doesn't even have to get onto the blockchain to be confirmed. You could do a transaction off the chain, so it's an ingenious idea. You and I can sort of I can pay you instantly, right? So within a millisecond, you can know that the Bitcoin is yours, even though that transaction doesn't get registered on the Bitcoin network. So quite ingenious, but I'll keep up the suspense a little bit. We'll discuss about Lightning Network towards the end of the course, right? And we'll look at certain other attacks in the subsequent lectures.